But in a case where no one says, oh, I can't see your screen, I'm just going to assume that we all can see my screen. So today we want to talk about the fundamentals of product management. Like I said, I've been fortunate enough to take a product from just idea that I woke up with in my head to discussing with the team about it, to running market research, to validate it, to running the product discovery, to further understand how this product is going to exactly solve user needs, to also use that to gauge whether we would sort of like be able to build it from an engineering standpoint, and also in what order are we going to build it. For example, should we jump from 0 to 10, or we should build step 1 at first and test with the market, and so on and so on. One of such products is called Pass.ng, is a test prep app that we started with my folks in university, my friends essentially, in university in 2015. And we took it from 0 users to over 1 million users across about six years. And that also exposed me to what it takes to actually build. Yes, I know that that is actually pretty small, but again, exposed me to what it takes to build for a large number of users. Not large enough if you compare to, I don't know, of course, products like Facebook or Instagram, but the underlining principles still remain the same. If you're building for 3 people or you're building for 10, of course, you will now have to add a lot of layers on top of it if you are going to be building for scale, for example. So I'm gonna move forward from here. So what are we going to be talking about today? In the contents, these are the things I was looking for. Well, the introduction has been done, so I probably will skip that. But we want to look at what product management is. We want to see what are the other similar roles to it. And for example, the things that people actually get confused with. For example, product management versus project management. So we'll look at all that and try to pick out the differences. We also want to look at career growth for a typical product manager. We want to see, the product management. What are the key things that that constitutes like product management? If you say you're a product manager, what are the key skills or key elements that you have to have on lockdown for you to say, okay, I'm actually a seasoned, product management. And then we want to look at the tools of the trade, for example. And so these are the things that we'll be looking at today. So again, this is me. I currently work with a health technology company called Babylon Health. We went public last year on the New York Stock Exchange. I work mostly on a clinician experience team. And we essentially are the biggest health tech company in the UK. We are like the second or third largest in the US at the moment, and of course in Canada. And we also have presence we are the single biggest private health provider in Rwanda as well. And of course, Southeast Asia. And I build experiences for clinicians or doctors and nurses and so on and so on. I build experiences for them, make sure that their experience is a lot better every single day. This is what I focus on across all these regions at Babylon. And yeah, essentially that. So what is product management? It's a very broad thing, and we will take a look at it. I found this very interesting definition that seemed to kind of cover almost all the aspects of it. It says product management is the practice of strategically driving and development, market launch, and continual support. Sorry, I remember you said you wanted to record. Are we still recording? Okay, it looks like maybe we are.
Yes, very well.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to flag that. All right. So again, product management is the practice of strategically driving the development, market launch, and continuous support and improvement of a company's products. one of the key things that's actually set product management apart is from other things like project management or agile delivery and so on, is that it's more all encompassing and it is more strategic, right? For example, a product manager is very much involved and responsible for determining what should be built in the first place. So we have a whole development team that may comprise of, or is cross-functional development team as case may be, that comprise of a QE engineer, which is quality assurance engineer. This is like in a typical sort of like semi-large company. QA engineer, you would have a UX designer or a UX designer with a UX researcher. You would have engineers, back-end, front-end, depending on the project that has to be worked on. You would have an analytics person, for example, and so on. And a PM is, while all these people are very skilled in their individual sort of like roles, a PM actually serve as like the person that decides what the direction is for that group. And so a PM understands that, okay, for this is what we want to build based on all of the data that we've gathered, based on business requirements, based on, and they are responsible for making sure that all these things are actually well balanced, that we are catering for, okay, we want to ensure that our users have a very delightful experience. We want to ensure that this also, is in line with what the business needs are. We also want to ensure that this thing that we want to build, my cross-functional team can actually build it. They can pull it off, they can make it work, right? And we can build this in the most cost-effective manner, such that at the end of the day, the company is not running at a loss because we have built this thing. So that at the end of the day, even if we build all these things, the users are not finding it very difficult to use. So that at the end of the day, when we build these things, we are able to ensure that the users can essentially find this useful too. So that is essentially what a product manager would do at first. And afterwards, they would ensure that this product is well executed. It is also taken to the market, and it is actually, touching the right people. It is getting to the right people as well. And then they are measuring how much this is actually affecting those people. So for example, if they're, from the customer service team, for example, the company is getting a lot of requests that there's a particular need that the users actually really want. The PM is getting a lot of tickets being sent our way saying that there's a request for this particular thing. The product manager works with the UX person to actually do some more investigation by way of conducting discoveries. Check like, okay, how exactly is this a problem? Is there other ways that we can solve this problem? Sometimes it's not even about the problem, might not really require that we have to get engineering time on it. It might not even require that. It might just be an education thing. It might just be that we need to educate the users that, oh, we already have this solved, or if you do it this way, this is the result you will get. And that's why sometimes you see some companies actually have like videos and stuff and tutorials and things like that out there, such that it's just a matter of education. So understanding all these things will take, for example, product discovery, right? You would have to do, and you can do all this, for example, running research and user research and things like that, just to understand a lot better about the problem. And in the case where you realize that, this is actually something that is, valuable enough, for example, users are going to maybe pay more for it. The company will make more money from it. It is feasible. And of course, the users are going to find a delightful experience out of it, or at least it will solve a major problem for the users, right? And so, we have the opportunity of actually giving them a better experience. And with that, the PM can then decide, okay, cool. based on all of these things, and then the fact that looking at it from all of these three angles: business, the user experience, and of course, is it feasible from an engineering standpoint? The PM consults, make sure that the engineering manager or whoever is leading the engineering team also on this is able to sign off on it and say, okay, this looks like something that we may be able to take on. They don't know the specifics of it yet, and then from that point, the UX person actually takes over. Making sure that we start designing what the experience will look like, or at least taking up what the experience will look like, and then testing it with the users again. And not just that, also getting feedback from the engineers and everybody else that is technical on the team, just so that we are all aligned on the fact that this thing can be built, and this thing can be built cheaply, maybe not cheaply, but cost effectively and in record time. And of course, we are certain that we are able to sort of like maybe get the users to pay more for it, or we can onboard more users because we had this feature to it. And with that, the company increases their bottom line as well. And so with all that being done, the PM can then decide that, okay, based on all these things, we can then break this down into like, okay, this is the problem we want to solve, but let's break it down into sub components. And this can be broken down into using things like what we call user stories, for example. And then they break all that down, and then they can decide, okay, for the first version of this, which normally people will call MVP, for the first version of V1, anyone, first version of it, this is the scope of it. Now that we've broken it down, we will take this and this at first and launch it and test with the users, see how they receive it. Because sometimes when you talk to the users and they say, oh, we like this is what we want, this is how we want it, and things like that, by the time you launch the product, it still may not have the same, even though you hacked the user, you've had all those things and everything is fine, you feel like, yo, we're actually really, really good. You launch it to the market, you may not get the right feedback, you may not get the right engagement that you actually want with the feature or with the product. And so at that point, you have to troubleshoot, and that is where data would come in. So before you launch that product to the market, after it has been built and so on, one of the key things that you want to embed into the product is analytics tracking. You want to ensure that you're able to track every single event and behaviors that the users are actually doing as they interact with that feature or the product, as the case may be. And because that is where you would see the user behavior, right, when they are going through it. And to measure that, there are two ways of actually getting things from user to understand how users are actually interacting with your product and things like that. There's the quantitative data part that you can look at, which is things like getting data from from Google Analytics, or getting it from Amplitude and so on. And with that, you can see the user behavior. The thing about quantitative data is that it's a lot more. It gives you like a lot more overview of like what the users are doing, but you specifically know about their behavior. But if you want to know the reason why they are doing things, for example, if you launch a app as a PM and you see that when you're looking through your funnel, the users are onboarded, they get to the home page and then they drop off. They didn't even get to the point where they get to, or maybe they got all the way to like subscription screen. And then there's a lot of drop off there. 100 people are onboarded and only 10 end up paying. 90 people drops off. Or they go to the home page and then they just drop off. They don't do any more interactions. They don't click on anything. They don't go anywhere else. And at that point, you start wondering what is going on. You've seen what is happening, but you need to know why they are dropping off. For example, you can do your own research and just look at things, critically. But sometimes you may not find the answer. What you need to do is to talk to the users. And in that point, as a PM, you probably would, if you have a UX researcher, you would get the person, and then you start scheduling interviews with users that have been onboarded. You reach out to them. Hey, hello, found out that you use this, you onboarded, whatever, but you dropped off at this point. Are you able to talk to us 30 minutes? We'll incentivize you and so on and so on. And you can actually get all that. So you can get feedback from them to know what is going on. Also, if you already have like a control group while you are running the initial discovery, for example, one of the things that we normally do from experience is that we normally have like a pilot group of users. If we are launching new product, you have like a pilot group of users that you've actually been going through the product with from discovery phase, from ideation stage. you've been going with them, they're giving you feedback, and then when you launch to the market, they are still the first set of super users, if you will, that you will launch it to, and then they will take a look at it, they would use it. And then they are able to, quickly give you a feedback, like say, oh, okay, this is not working as we thought, this is that. And you can even monitor analytics from them as well. With that, it's easy for you to quickly reach out to them because they're already like form a community, and they are happy because you have involved them from day one, and so on and so on. And with that, if anything goes wrong, you are able to quickly roll back because you only have like a pilot. And I recommend this quite well, especially when you're dealing with a large number of users, or that you are in an environment or an industry that is very, very regulated. For example, where I work right now, I work in health, and it's very regulated, especially here in the UK, and in most countries in the world, even in Nigeria, they are very much regulated, and you don't want to push out a feature that would cause people to have negative health outcome. For example, you don't want to have that. So you want to have like a pilot use case at first, a set of people that you want to talk to, and get feedback quickly, and that if there are any issues, you can quickly roll back. So these are all the things that I've talked about are just some of the things that a PM would definitely look at and would be involved with. Some of the myths that people talk about is a PM is the CEO of the product. Well, in some ways it feels like, yeah, but CEO is CEO, PM is PM. They are not the CEO of the product, but as a PM, it's expected that you will understand the product that you are administering from end to end. Like, what it is. You don't have to understand the technicalities behind writing the code behind it, for example, but you need to know the why behind the product. Every single thing, you need to know the why. If there are several features on the app, you need to understand, you need to know every of those features. The reason why you actually added those features, you need to know it. That's why if you're onboarding as a PM, all you have to do is interact with the product. You need to interact with that product that you are actually going to be, PMing over. You will make sure that you check it end to end and ask questions from any existing stakeholders so you understand, and ask them for documentation that they've done in the past. Because mostly they will be PRDs for every feature that is launched or every stage of like any part of the product that has been launched. And PRD is called a product requirement document, which is where they will outline all of the things, that the reasons, the why, the resources, the things, the duration, all of those things that was done or that is to be done about that feature and will be written in it. And all those things will sit in a place for the company where you can actually access and read. Again, as a PM, some of your superpowers will be that you are able to read, you are able to communicate clearly, and you are able to write well. These are very important skills that nobody really talks about at a very high level when it comes to PM, but these are the key things that actually set a PM apart. You need to be able to do it. One of the key reasons why, and I'm just dropping this in. One of the key reasons why when I got to the UK, I was at a crossroad. Like, should I just get a job as a PM or get a job as a product designer? Both I've been in product for a long time, and I have had the privilege to be the two. But one of the key things that I found out was that while I felt like I'm a Nigerian, we grew up speaking English and so on. I feel like I may struggle a bit to be able to communicate as clearly as I would want. But what I found out is that even as a product designer, even when I eventually got a job as a product designer, I still needed to communicate as clearly as a PM. And so both ways, I realized that the work I need to do was to actually work on my communication skills a lot better. A lot of people will argue that maybe I have a better, I think you communicate quite quickly and things like that. But I've seen levels to this thing. There are level to. So again, one of the key things that is never really said as a PM, especially if you're working with a diverse team, for example, such as my team right now at Babylon, you will need to be able to communicate clearly in a and also in languages that they would really, really understand. And then in ways that they will understand, a very inclusive way of actually communication. That's quite important. So moving on, So what are the other, product similar roles that are, and their differences? There's what we call product owner. Product owner sometimes is also used interchangeably with product manager. Well, product owner goes a lot deeper in the context of an agency. For example, a product owner is the person that is representing the client company whenever discussions about the product that is being built is held. They are the ones that, they are, coming with the requirements, they are being briefed from time to time, they are even coming to observe, like,
new studies available on Prolific.
Apologies for that. They are coming to observe research sessions and so on. And so if you look at it from that angle, you see that they are definitely different. On the agency side, they may actually have product manager who is actually handling that product, for the client. But then on the client side, they also have someone who also understands the why of that product and comes with the requirement and so on and so on. That person in that context is the product owner. While, of course, the other person that is actually handling the development, making sure that, the why is understood and, working with the product team to deliver on it, to track it and so on, will be a product manager on that side, as well. So these are things that happens. And sometimes a product owner all this depends on the company. Sometimes a product owner is also seen as someone that is on a higher level of a PM. For example, a product director or a VP of product, for example, someone that has a 10,000 feet view of the product, someone that has like the overall why of that product, for example, and then gives it to a subordinate PM to effect and champion. And so such persons can also be called product owner, but it all depends on the company. Also, we have Scrum Masters, aka so Scrum Masters are people that actually practice Agile, and they ensure that everyone delivers, that the resources at hand is enough to deliver. They have a grip on the number of days or weeks or months or sprints that it will take to deliver, and they help everybody they help as much as possible to unblock everybody in the project team to deliver. And they don't necessarily have to be working with tech driven teams. For every team that exists in an organization that is working to deliver on things, a Scrum Master can actually work with them. So they are quite generic as well. It's just that nowadays we find a lot of usefulness for them also within product teams. Agile delivery managers are, to me, not so different from Scrum Masters, for example, but they're a little bit more broad. They in most ways they are more technical than a typical Scrum Master would be. But again, in the grand scheme of things, there shouldn't be any difference between the two of them. The Scrum Master would definitely be an Agile delivery manager any day. They may just need more context. For example, in the case where a Scrum Master has not really been working with product teams before, we just need a little bit more context on the key lingos. For example, release management. For example, how do we ensure that our release cadence is uninterrupted? And when I say release, what do I mean? For example, for every product team that's practicing Agile, for every sprint that you do, you are gearing towards a particular release. And so it means that there is something new that you guys are working on. And for that sprint, which is like a cycle of about 2 weeks, depending on companies, some do 3 weeks, but mostly it's 2 weeks. After that, the result of it will probably be that we are shipping something, we are pushing something to production, and all that in between the time that you go from we are ready, we've matched the PR, is gone to the prepared environment, it's gone for approval and so on, and then you eventually get pushed to production. All that process is also handled in product teams that have Agile delivery manager. Most times they get the Agile delivery managers to handle that process because it can be painstaking. Engineers don't like doing it. PMs don't like doing it. Nobody else likes doing it. And it requires a lot of follow-up with different folks, like the DevOps people and so on and so on, maybe cybersecurity, maybe if you're in a very regulated industry, you probably will have people in safety that does safety review of all of the releases that needs to go out. So they follow up with all of those people to ensure that everyone does what they need to do as at the time they need to do it, so that they are the team can push out this release from time to time, and they stick with the cadence that has been set before them, and so on. And project managers for me are either depending on the companies, they are either Scrum Masters or Agile Delivery Manager. They can be a combination of both. But they're essentially people, again, just like the way I was trying to describe a Scrum Master, I think a project manager is more of what I was describing, which is that they can actually either be embedded within product teams, or they can also work somewhere else within a company. They can help. A construction company would definitely have a project manager or need a project manager. Their own work is to ensure that, there is a project, it has a beginning and a end. It goes from 0 to 100, and it has to go from 0 to 100 in 23 days. We need 10 people to be able to do it. And if we want to break that into 50 days, we need 20 people. And they are strict on that. They monitor it. They ensure that everybody's doing their job every single day. In the case where there are blockers, they unblock everyone and they get everyone to deliver in record time, so that the company does not lose money, period. And they monitor projects from, and these things have beginning and end, just like I said, compared to a product manager, for example, who maybe handling a product that does not have an end date. And in fact, one of the key features of a product is the fact that it doesn't have an end date. A product should not start and end. It has to always continually be refreshed and updated, and new things keep coming up. That's why you see companies sometimes, and specifically tech companies with tech products, sometimes you just be like, the new update they will do is just refreshing the entire UI, creating a new, and then you two just fall in love all over again with the product. Facebook used to be different type of Facebook, like in 2005 is different, 2010 is just different, 2015 is different, 2022 right now, Facebook, they will go through different rounds of and for all of this, in their major projects. And inside of each of those projects, there are Scrum Masters and Agile Delivery Managers, project manager, whatever, that are handling this. But there's a PM that has been there since like maybe 2005, that has been handling this over and over again, and it has never ended for that person. Like, it's just, and they're always thinking of, okay, what do we do? They take user feedback, they put it into the product, they make it better, they upgrade it, this, and so on and so on. And so a PM's work is to ensure that the product is kept getting better. If there are bugs, they are fixing it. If there are complaints, they are attending to it. And then if there are none of that, they have a roadmap of things that they want the product to actually achieve over time, right? And so they are sticking to that roadmap. They are ensuring that, okay, by July 2020 we want to do this. By 2023, these are the things we want to do. So they are ensuring that there's always work for everybody to do on the product, ensuring that the product is actually meeting the goals and metrics that has been set before it, and so on and so on. So, and again, if, for example, if the Facebook product does not have to end one day, Facebook itself as a company will die out, because there's nothing else for them to do, right? One of the things that keep the company going is the fact that the product is also a going concern. So the product itself has to be a going concern for the company itself to actually be a going concern. And so a PM ensures that that going concern continues to go. It remains going, and so on. And then we have product marketing managers. This is a role that's quite new when it comes to product management. Like, it's like a specialized field within product management. They are more focused on like the growth of the product, like how do we sell it, the go-to-market strategy, measuring the product from a growth standpoint. For example, a more generic PM may be looking at it in terms of like, what is the engagement like, are users having trouble sort of like completing tasks on the app, are they running into bugs, and so on and so on. But a product marketing manager, while they may also take a look at this, but mostly what they'll be looking at is how are we, how much are we able to smoothen the journey for the user to get to the point where they pay, where they subscribe, where they, that financial part of it, that ensuring that the users are able to see the product, they're able to download the product, they're able to onboard with the product with relative ease, and up to the point where they are able to pay, right? So they ensure all these things. And so they are, yes, they love the product, they are there. So sometimes you may have in a company you have the product marketing, you have a more substantial like overall PM and so on and so on. There's no thing, it's just a new role that has really happened, but they make sure that the product is actually giving the returns that is meant to do. It is reaching the right users, because again, you might actually be having users onboarded, but they are not the right users, because again, they may not be able to sort of like pay you because they don't have a need for it. So the products put in front of the right people, they are downloading, they are they are visiting the website, they are onboarding, the right way, they are paying, the right way, and so on and so on. So they may ensure that, and if there is a need for them to work with engineering to ensure that, they're smoothing this journey or work with UX and so on, they will do it. In fact, there are growth product designers as well. Product designers that are also like the equivalent of a product marketing manager, but they are designers. They also design to ensure that all of these journeys are smooth for the users, and the product is actually giving all of the returns that is meant to give, and the users are also getting a lot of value in return for using the product. And then we have the technical product managers. These ones are people that they go a lot deeper than just having a general overview of the whys of the product. They also understand the how of the product as well. So when I say the why of the product, for example, if again, like I said before, like exactly why every single feature on that product, or if you're a PM, and I have to quickly say at this point that in some companies, in bigger companies, as a PM, you are only responsible for a certain part of the company app. For example, in Facebook, I know someone said that once, I think a friend who works at Facebook was like, yo, there are product teams that are organized around the like button, just the like button in Facebook, and that's all they monitor. They ensure that everything is working fine, and so on and so on. Because again, Facebook is a very big product that's used all across the world. There are nuances every year, here and there. The thumbs up in Lagos, that means you are well done or something like that, may mean something else somewhere else, and so on and so on. And so there are people that are ensuring that this works for everybody. Also, there are different devices that people use to access Facebook. Some people, those devices may not work for them unless they make some certain changes and so on. So there are product teams that need to be ensuring that every single part of Facebook works for everybody, because their goal is to onboard billions of people as well, and they have billions of users. And so it's worth it that they actually do this. So a technical PM will be a PM that not just understands that, oh, we place this here because of this social reason, and so whenever anybody wants to do anything around that, they have to talk to them and so on. They also understand the underlying technology behind it, mostly because they come from a technical background themselves. Some of this, or most of them, would be originally product engineers themselves before, or aka software engineers before. They just wanted to, they just upgraded themselves into, not like upgraded, but it's just evolved into being a product manager. And so sometimes in some companies, the smaller ones, if they have technical PMs, like a friend of mine, when he got a technical PM role, he was expected to write code from time to time just to support. And then I remember that I used to have a PM work with me some time back, and he writes code. He still writes code actively, but his role isn't as a software engineer, but he helps with things like release management, some technical bits that requires some little coding here and there, or at least understanding of how code works. He's very, very resourceful, and engineers loved him so much because
New studies available on
he's able to help on that aspect. But again, like I said, I have to drop in a caveat here. This is specifically for technical product managers, and it's not all companies that actually recruit them. Yes, if a product manager comes with experience as a software engineer, it's a plus, but it doesn't define a great PM. In fact, it can be a negative thing sometimes, because as a PM, you are not supposed to go too deep into like the technicalities of the how of your product. Like, how am I going to make you work? Yes, you need to understand. You talk to your engineer and say, oh, this is what we want to be, blah, blah, blah. You know, how do you think this is going to work? Sometimes it may be like, this cannot work. Oh, this is going to be too much. It's going to take us too much time, blah, blah, blah. And then because you really feel like this, you are so convinced, because, as a PM, sometimes you look at the data, look at everything, and everything is fine. Your gut feeling is telling you that this is what we should pursue. And then you talk to engineers and they say, no, this one cannot work, or this one take us 1 million years to do. And then you be like, okay, can you break it down for me? Like, why exactly is it going to be hard? And then at that point, they're walking you through the how. Not just, you've gone beyond the level of why, and you understand the why. You've articulated this to your team, everybody sees that. But then they have to walk you through the how, like, how exactly are you thinking of going about this, and why you think that it's not going to work, and so on. And then if you are very technical at that point, it can be a plus that you're able to say, oh, why don't we use this particular algorithm? And if you use this particular architecture, this one, that one, it may actually work. And they'll be like, that's true. All right, I'll try it. Yeah, that technicality may help you. But most times as a PM, again, you don't need all that. Sometimes you just need to be logical. You need product sense. And that's where some of those things that actually really come in. There's what we call product sense. With experience, all that comes in. And then by the time they start telling you some things, because you've seen it before, you've seen that this thing is possible. You've seen that, something similar has been built in the past in a shorter period of time, or so on, or that they just walk me through the logic of how you are thinking about it. And you may not even get technical at all, but you just be like, okay, we need to connect to a database here, we need an API here, and so on and so on. And be like, why don't you just switch this and switch it to this side? Because sometimes someone that is actually in the middle of the action, that is actually writing the code, may be blind to seeing other ways to actually do things. And so as a PM, you're also like a coach, like a football coach. It's easy, for example, those of us who watch football on the football pitch, remotely at home, for example, you will see a player that is making a run on the left, and someone is with the ball in the middle, and you are saying, pass to him. But because he is in the middle, sometimes you may not see that person. But you that you're watching from 10,000 feet above, you could see that hole, that if you make that pass, that is the surest goal, for example. But the person in the middle of the pitch cannot, is not able to see, even though he's in the middle of it, and then you'll be like, frustrated, such a stupid player, oh my God. But it's not his fault. It's just because he's in the middle of the action, he cannot see a lot. You can't see a 10,000 feet view enough to know, where the openings are. And he has just a few seconds to make a quick decision, and so on and so on. So that is where a PM actually comes in. So your job really isn't to imagine a coach now tearing shirt and running to the field to go and collect the pass, to go and score. Then there will be a problem. Your job will be to wait till the end of the first half, and say, oh, I actually saw that you've been making some mistakes. Like, you were going to the right and this guy is always running to the left. All you have to do is ensure that you are looking up to the left mostly, is always there. And alternatively, you can look at this place, is always there. And then they'll be like, that's true, coach, I will do it that way. You don't know how to play. You may not even know how to play football or be that skillful. Most times the coaches will have been very old. They cannot even play as, at that level, even if they are previous footballers. But again, they can't jump on the field to do that. Their value is in seeing things from a higher level, from a wide level, and then using that to zoom in and tell the person that is actually in the middle of the action to do the right thing. And that's what a PM, also really is. So you are like that football coach in essence. And so again, that's why I said that sometimes understanding the how doesn't necessarily help. And that is why, again, as a PM, you don't necessarily have to be a product engineer. You don't have to be a software engineer to be a successful PM. Most of the most brilliant PMs that I know are not software engineers. They probably never written a line of code in their lives, but they are fantastic PMs. So I just need to lay that out there. But if you know how to code, it's a plus. Most times, for as long as you don't get into the how, but the temptation will be there for you, and so you need to find a way to not get tempted and jump into the football pitch. Any question at this point before I move on?
Oh, thank you very much. Any question, please?
Okay.
Okay.
So in the absence of a question, I would move on. I think that
I have a question, please.
Oh, okay. Go on.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Thanks for the presentation so far.
Yeah.
My question is, in a typical project, I can see you mentioned product manager, agile project manager, and the likes.
Yeah.
In a typical project, do we have like the list of or the minimal roles that should be, those roles should exist in a typical project? What are the roles that you cannot compromise? These roles, these guys, some people must occupy this role in a project at the minimum.
Okay. Do you mean a tech project?
Yes, tech project.
Oh, okay. Okay, good question. Good question. So I think all this depends on like the size of the company or the type of company, for example. And then of course what the company can handle. Just like I said, in Facebook, they have like a whole fully fleshed product team on the like button alone, and that's testament to the sheer size and ability financially of a company like Meta, right? And a smaller startup may only just need one full stack engineer that will do everything from end to end, at least for them to be able to push out the MVP, for example. So it's difficult to tell. Sometimes you look at the very first product of a startup, even Facebook itself, the very first version was one person that built it, who is Mark Zuckerberg himself. He was the one that wrote the code. It was just one guy. It was a one-man battalion that built it. So it can range from one person to I don't know, 20, 30 people working on a particular thing, or to hundreds of thousands like Facebook has at the moment, working on like different aspects of that product, of that same product, right? So it's difficult to tell. But again, if I would say for a very small startup, it's probably be that you need, depending on what you are building, again, if it's for web, for example, if you're building a web app, you will need a front-end engineer. Nowadays, that's what happens. Before, you probably don't need a front-end engineer. You just need someone that can write code end to end. But now you need a backend engineer who will write the APIs and do the database schema, and also maybe help you with Devops. But again, it all depends. You need a backend engineer, you need a front-end engineer, someone that will translate all the designs done by a UX designer, which means you need a UX designer, translate all the designs into actual clickable sort of like interactive web interface. And then they also consume the APIs, which are application programming interface. Is like a wire that connects the database and the logic that manipulates it to the front end, which is the thing that shows on the web browser. So that wire in between that connects the back end to the front end is what we call APIs. And mostly is the backend engineer that writes that, and the front end engineer consumes it. And in the case where it is a mobile app, for example, one of the advantages of an API written is that it can be consumed by both the front end engineer that is handling the web part and the mobile engineer that is handling both the iOS and the Android app at the same time. So one single API would be consumed by all of this. And that's one of the things that help ensure that when you log into Facebook on web, it's still your same account that you can use to log into your Facebook on your Android phone. And it's still the same account that you use to log into your Facebook on iOS. If you get your iOS phone today, all you have to do is remember your password and your login details. and you'll be able to log in across board, and you see the same thing across the same thing because it's still the same data, but it's being served by just one API across all of these things. Of course, it's a lot more complex than that in between for a company like Facebook, but that's the underlying sort of like logic and technologies. To answer your question lightly or simply, the minimum I think anyone product team nowadays, sophisticated one would need would be a front-end, a back-end engineer. If it's just web, or if it's web and mobile, they will need a mobile engineer, at least one person nowadays with technologies like Flutter or React Native and so on. You can actually have one engineer build with one code base, iOS and Android. And so they can just consume like, the same API for the two and the same engineer doing those two. And you have a front-end engineer who also consumes the same API, but then, shows it on web, and you have a back-end engineer. And for most companies, smaller companies, it is still the back-end engineer that does things like DevOps. And what's DevOps? Is mostly all of the messy work that happens between when you are ready to sort of like when you've matched the PR and you feel like everything is fine on locals, whatever, and you want to push it to production. All of those things that happen between like your testing, your staging environment to your production environment. All that messy work is what the DevOps actually do. It's a lot, and when you hear things like AWS cloud and AWS, and you hear things like Google Cloud, you hear things like DigitalOcean and so on and so on and so on like that. These are the things that DevOps people actually do. It's actually a very rewarding career at the moment because everything has moved. If you go into the AWS, a whole world on its own now, and so on and so on. So but most times a backend engineer will do that. So if you have all that, and then maybe now in smaller teams, PMs double as QA or QE, as the case may be, a quality assurance engineer. They ensure that, okay, when a particular feature has been, we've set it out, we've written the user story, we've written the tickets for it. A ticket, for example, is like a module on a project management tool, for example, Jira, that specify all of the what we are trying to achieve with that particular piece of task. For example, it will specify things like the user story, some context of what we are trying to build, and of course the acceptance criteria. It will also carry things like if there are designs that the front-end engineer, if it's in case of a front-end engineer, needs to see, or architectural diagram that a back-end engineer needs to see. It will carry all that information. It will carry things like, what is the the business impact of it, and so on and so on. It will have all those information, and also it will be arranged in a very good way. For example, if it's part of an epic, this is a typical topic that we can always stretch another day. But these are things that a PM also somehow also oversee. But in the case where you have a agile delivery manager, you see all that. So to answer your question again, you need front-end engineer, a back-end engineer. If there's mobile, you need a mobile engineer who will probably do Flutter, whatever. And then you would need a PM, obviously, someone that would ensure that everybody is doing their job. And sometimes a PM would double as a delivery manager or a project manager, and also double as a QE. So for smaller companies, that's what they will do. And the backend engineer will also double as a DevOps engineer as well. The UX person can also double as a UX researcher. So you find someone that does the research and also does the design at the same time. And also, who else also does doubling? Front-end engineer, they've got a lot on their plate anyway, so they probably will still be front-end engineer doing front-end engineer things. So essentially that those are like the minimum things that you see: front-end engineer, back-end engineer, PM. Yeah, and that's it. And with that, you should be able to pull off things, the minimum that you would get in a smaller company if you're talking about a team. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks.
Right, thank you. So any more questions before I move on? And do we still have some more time? Because again, it looks like I may only have about a few more minutes to spend before.
Okay. I think you have a question. You have the
It's a
time.
question.
Yeah, I think you have a question.
Oh, okay. Someone says, as a pro, okay, no worries. Thank you. As a product manager, do you carry out design thinking sessions that benefits? Does it bring to the product development? Okay, Do you carry out design thinking sessions? What benefit does it bring to the product development? I notice that PMs do these sessions often. Yes, it's a very good question. Very, very good question. Yes, you need to do this. You may not, when you say product thinking, we are talking about things like, conducting discovery, product discovery, for example. And all these things are essential to ensure that you are building the right thing. There is nothing there's nothing worse than getting the entire product team to go on in the wrong direction. That is, you said, because you didn't do enough discovery of the product, of the feature or the product, whatever it is you're trying to build. You didn't do enough discovery. You didn't prioritize it properly. You didn't get enough data to back it up. And then you went on to, I don't know, follow your hunches and whatever alone. And then you went on to get everybody else to build it, and users didn't use it. It didn't make any money. And it was a sheer waste of time and effort. It's going to cost the company a lot of money, and it would cost a lot also for the PMs. I don't know, career as well in some ways. So as a PM, you are that last line of defense, making sure that people are actually building the right thing. There's one thing to do things the right way. There's another thing to ensure that you are doing the right thing. It is that right thing, right, that the PM does. So having design thinking sessions, first is to determine whether the problem beforehand is worth solving. In some cases, you don't know what the problem is. As a PM, you are the one to come up with, like, okay, these are the things that we have to do. For example, if you have to design the roadmap for a product, it's a new product. These are the things that we want to do down the line. How do you know what you need to do? You are the one that is setting the vision, for example. So this is where, like, product sense will come in. This is where talking to the users will come in. Just, asking them questions. This is where you will do market research. This is where you do competitor analysis, and so on and so on. What is obtainable in the market at the moment? What are the problems that people face? And so with all these things, you start seeing, like, problems here and there, and then your product sense start kicking in. You start thinking about, okay, these are the solutions we can actually do, because these are the existing solutions also. Okay, we can incorporate this. While talking to you, we realize that we can solve this another way, and so on. And then you start, with all that being done, you can then do deeper discoveries to understand, okay, now that we understand that we've established that there's a problem here, right? And so we want to do more discoveries, and with this, you can have, like, do research, understand all of these things, and then you can highlight things like, how might we solve this? How might we do this? How might we do this and that? And then you can have things like what Google Ventures call design sprints with your team and stakeholders, and you bring everybody together and brainstorm on, like, how can we've identified, this is like the problem we want to solve, and these are the key sub problems under it. Now that we've identified all this, how might we solve this, for example? So, for example, while you are doing your let me just use an example of, like, a test prepper. You realize that in your street there are 10 kids that wanted to write JAM, and when they wrote the JAM, you were asking them, how's your results, Shade? How's your result, Toby? We found out that none of them scored, or maybe 8 of them didn't score up to 200, and the cutoff is 200 points. And you've been seeing, these things, and you started to talk to them, like, hey, Toby, what do you think? What happened? Yeah, I tried my best. I did my best, but it's just that the computer went off in the middle of it, or that I'm not so used in our school. We don't use computer. The only thing I have is a phone or something like that. And my phone, I couldn't do this and that. And suddenly you start thinking about it, like, oh, this is actually a problem that needs to be solved. So you talk to them, you find teachers, you talk to teachers. I realized that in my street there are 10 kids that actually wrote JAM. 8 of them actually failed. They didn't score up to 200. what is your experience of this? And now says, it's actually not, it's actually the same. Or in my school, 1,000 kids wrote, only 10 passed, and so on. And, from my experience, this is what I think happened. You're like, okay, cool. So if you have to solve this problem, for example, what do you think you will do? For example, and they'd be like, if I have the will, I would organize daily tutorials for them, or I would broadcast one thing on TV or whatever. And then you start thinking about it like, okay, all right, interesting. And then with your products and you start kicking in, what if we build an app, that suggests every single day, that prompts them that, okay, this is 7 o'clock, you should do 2 hours of biology reading. And these are like, questions that you should practice and so on. They've got phones. We realize that they've got mobile phones. They've only been using it to play games and so on. What if we're able to do all these things? You talk to them, you revisit the 8 kids that fail again. Okay, hello, can I talk to you again? What if we use this your phone? And then there's a app that nudges you to read. I'm like, yes, I think that would be really, really cool. Only that I feel like if you're sending notifications too much, I will ignore it though. Yeah, I just feel like, it's only a few days that I really like reading. For example, there's a few times in the day that I really like reading. I only like reading in the middle of the night, or I like reading very early in the morning and so on. And you think about it like, okay, what if we had into that app, we had a ability for you to choose the time you would like the app to notify you, so that it'd be like, yes, I would like that very much. I will just put 4 a.m. in the morning, I'll put 3 p.m. in the morning, and then you ask the other guy, they said the same thing. You write it down. These are features that have to go into our roadmap for this product. Okay. Flexible reminders. You put it down there. You start listing all of those things out, and all that. And in the ones where you cannot think of anything, you write them all out. How might we, for example, teach them in an engaging way without necessarily make them sit in the same position? Or how can we show them, teach them via video without using so much data? Because when you are talking to them, they say, it's actually nice that we're able to use our phone to learn, but the thing is, my mommy only give me 200 naira to subscribe for MTN data for a whole month. And if, as long as your solution can work with that 200 naira data that I got for a whole month, then it is okay for me. It will solve my problem and so on. And then you realize that if you are streaming 8 MB of 1 MB of video, it's probably going to take 100 naira. And then that the set of videos that you would need to teach them enough for them to be ready for the exam will probably run into like thousands of naira. And so you start thinking about how might we build a solution that can use less megabits, or will take the transfer rate will be something of lower megabits and so on and so on. And so these are things that you can workshop. These are things that you can do some. And from a UX standpoint, everybody will come together. Engineers will be there. They will say, oh, actually there's this new technology that Google just built. We have been experimenting with it. We feel like if we deploy it, let's just go do some technical spike. In the middle of that, they can do some spike, and then they'll come back to the group and say, okay, we actually think that we are able to slash it from like 10 videos for 200 naira to 10 videos for 50 naira. And like, that's good progress and so on. So before you know it, every single person started like bringing things together. So if you ask me what is the value of product thinking, there's a lot. And when it comes to like design thinking and so on, there is a lot of things involved. Design thinking is brainstorming. Design thinking is what happens when your designer comes and says, oh, I've got some design, can you take a look? Design thinking is what happens when you do user research. Design thinking is what happens when you consider data from the way your user behavior to decide what you want to build or how your solution will look like, and so on and so on. So there are several things that the PM will look at that constitute design thinking as a whole, and the benefits of it are enormous, right? For example, as a PM, if someone employs you as a PM for a new product that they've not built before, They're just saying, okay, I've got this problem. I know that the problem is validated. I've talked to people, but we've not built the product. So as a PM, you are responsible for building out like the roadmap for it. How do you build out the roadmap? One, how do you identify the features that needs to be there? How do you know that these features are going to be technically feasible? How do you know that these features would satisfy the user and give them delight? How do you know that this feature will actually eventually ensure that you have you retain your user? There's higher retention rates, there's lower drop-offs and so on, or that ultimately that they contribute to the bottom line for the company. So this is things like design thinking that will help you to do that. And then there are prioritization frameworks that you then use, which is also a different conversation entirely. There are several of them. There's RISE framework and so on and so on. And you can use that to then prioritize and say, okay, based on all of these metrics, this particular feature, even though we want to do it is not a must have. It's probably a could have or a should have, right? And so we will do this, instead of doing this in January, we'll do it in, I don't know, December, if we have time. Or we have some resources and so on. So you prioritize, you put all these things on your roadmap. But you need discovery and you need design thinking to be able to decide to validate anything that you're thinking on, or to even know what exactly it needs to be in the first place. And then you need design thinking to ensure that every single person are also on board to ensure that you deliver on this. So the value of design thinking sessions are enormous. And in fact, you cannot be a good PM without actually engaging in it. And that is why PMs and product designers or product UX researchers are always like this. They work like hand in hand a lot. And also and if there is an analytics person on your team, in Babylon, for example, we have analytics persons on embedded, in squads, who can help take a look at the data and also consistently always feed us with the data and say, okay, this is what is going on, this is the user behavior from time to time, and with that everybody we are making data-driven decisions and so on. And so you need all that together as a PM. Without it, those are like your highs, and then you get all of those data together, and then your design thinking, your product sense then comes together to mix everything together to make a good decision out of it. And then with that, you can say, hey, my team, this is the direction we are going, right? This is the direction we are going. And in the case where you have, superiors, and so you can go on to them and, and say, based on this data, based on, the discovery we work, based on the design sprint we ran, based on this and this, I think this should be our roadmap. This one we are doing now, we have to do it now because it satisfies both user experience, the company, the business needs, and of course, it's also feasible from an engineering standpoint. It doesn't cost us so much, and so on and so on. And I think we should do this, and so on and so on. And then your superior then says, okay, cool, that's cool. Let's go do it. Or why don't you move this and that? Because they have better context, or that they are, maybe a meeting happened yesterday at the senior leadership team, whatever, or at the executive level, and then the business is shifting direction a little bit, and you can say, oh, why don't you just pause this for now? I think this one that you've placed down the lane, it should be the first thing that will happen because the company is shifting direction. But because you have all this data, I think it's also, this one should come right next after it, and so on. And so all these things happen as a PM. And again, every single day you're actually making decisions. That's why one of the key things that they will say for a PM is that your brain is not for holding data. Your brain is for processing data. So what you should need to, and that's why you need, again, like I said earlier in the beginning of this, that you need to be able to write down things, document, like your life depends on it, because it actually does. You document things. Once you know things, you put them down, you document. And nowadays, documentation has been made a lot easier with Google Docs, with Notion, and so on and so on. Everybody can contribute. You can easily put things together and just tag the right people and validate it, or get them to add more to it, and so on. And so make sure that you are document because your life depends on it, so that you free up your brain for processing things. So where you have a lot of data, because there's a lot of data that's always coming through, a lot of information coming from right, left, and center every time as a PM. How do you then ensure that you're making sense of, you're making the right decision, you're clear-headed every single time, such that you're able to make the right decision and unblock your team and show them the way forward, and they also trust you because again, you are dealing with, you know, good professionals, people that are very good at them. And if you leave engineers to their own devices, they would say, yes, this is what we should be building, which may be wrong, right? You don't want that. You want to ensure that, you know, you are driving what the team should be doing without necessarily being forceful about it. That's what they call influencing without authority, for example. So you're able to be influential. Your team trusts you because, you know, you are data driven. Your product sense is like an antenna. It's, you know, it's very clear. It's very, you know, speaking things up real quick, and you're able to make, you know, clear decisions, and you're able to communicate clearly why you chose, you know, why you make that decision, and, you know, why you feel like it's the best decision. And in case where there is, you know, a point where you cannot move forward, you are able to unblock this by, you know, consulting, you know, more senior stakeholders and so on, or just, you know, getting the team to commit to something, and you all move forward from there, and you are not just stuck and momentum sort of like stops. You don't want that to happen at any point. And it does happen from time to time, but a PM, your job is to ensure that, you know, keep the team moving, and you all are able to deliver on what your KPIs are, for example. And so I don't know if I've been able to answer your questions, but I hope I've done justice to that. But if you have not, feel free to reach out to me later for that. For career growth.
Okay, sorry, please. Let me just cut you in. Thank you very much for this. This is amazing. This is even something like we are really like having a master class already. Like we're having like in-depth understanding of what product is all about, how to go about it, and the various steps. And thank you so much for this. This is amazing. Okay, so if for further questions like discussion on fundamental training and on this, you can always use the platform for that. Using the forum, you can ask questions, and then we are going to be having him also join our platform, Imole. So any question relating to fundamental training, like he'll be able to answer. So just feel free, you know, ask questions. But maybe you want to develop a career in in product management, you can just ask questions, you know, when you're stuck, and Imole will be very, very willing and happy to answer questions on that. So feel free to add questions. Use the forum on Favored Online under products under Grow Your Career in Tech series. So just use the link and ask questions, and he will reply. If he's not available to reply, people that have gone through this training and people that have also gone and learned something can also, yes. And you can also follow him also at Imole Ayo. And you can also ask questions like that also. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is very, very good and amazing. Thank you for the training. Well detailed. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. And sorry we couldn't finish the stuff that I've got written up. But I hope you all were able to pick up, you know, one or two things from that.
But you can just quickly round up and tell us about the career growth, you know. That's
okay, I can round up. All right, cool. Let me share my screen again then. All right, thank you. So for the career growth path, okay, let me share that. Okay, if you can see my screen. All right, so for the career growth path, we have the individual contributor, which we call the IC track, and the management track. This varies from company to company, but mostly you will start from like an associate level, which is more like junior PM. Mostly people ask a good question, which is like, how do people actually break into product management? It's not so clear how people break into it. Most times you need to have been around tech for a while. You need to have, you know, experience doing other things in tech. For example, you're a PM, you're an engineer before, you're a UX person before, you're a salesperson before. You've just been doing other roles in tech, and you understand to a large extent what, you know, how or the things that are, you know, involved in building a tech product. And mostly that's how people transition into it. But again, you can transition into product management from anywhere. And that is one of the things that this particular program is for. All right. What you need to do is ensure that you are able to you know, put together. One of the fastest way that I should tell people is that bring a team together, right? Like I said before, like the question that someone asked about what is the minimum number of teams that to build a product. bring those things, but there are new people that are learning back-end engineering, new people that are learning front-end engineering, new UX people and things like that. As a PM, you be the one to bring these people together. Say, oh, I know you are learning Java as a back-end engineer. No wala. You are learning front-end. Okay, I have this idea that we should build this thing. Why don't we all build it? Even if it doesn't work out or whatever, it's fine. We build it, we all put it in our portfolio. You as a PM, you say, oh, I gathered these people together. We did this, and we launched it. There are free tools that you can use nowadays for all of this. You can launch something to Netlify, for example, for free, and it will be there to have a link. You'll be able to log in and check and whatever. And you can use this as your portfolio as a PM, and you would practice all of the things that you've learned, in bootcamp or in all this, in programs such as this, and you practice it. And when you get to interviews, you can tell them that, okay, I've actually built a product. I organized a cross-functional team that comprises of, a front-end engineer, back-end engineer, QA person, whatever, and we built this. And the whole idea is this, I track this particular metric, I track this, I track that, I did this discovery or whatever, and all those things. And if anybody that's interviewing they will be impressed, because you've done your own work. For example, you've done your own work, right? So you want to do that. Identify people that are just starting up in tech too. Everybody needs it. If you organize them together and they too will have experience working with a PM. So if someone says, oh, have you worked with a PM or other people before you, they will say yes. So everybody benefits. So if you're able to do that, on Twitter, there are plenty of people that are learning all over the place. You can always reach out to them and say, we want to form a group. We all build this thing. There's this idea. You will be the one to bring it. You will have written the PRD, do all those things, do all the homework, and then write out the tickets and all that. Use Trello. Trello is free. At least some part of it's very free. Put it together. Write tickets. Let them pick it up. You guys do stand-ups and stuff. Do the Agile rituals. Do retros. Do 2 weeks. Build it all in 1-2 weeks. You can do all these things, and with that you will give yourself a lot of experience, and then you can start applying for PM roles, associate PM roles, at startups, and you will get it, right? So again, for individual contributors, you start with associate PM, you go to PM, you go senior PM, and then you go to principal PM. Principal PM in most companies are equivalent of product director level on the management track, for example. And then we have things like senior product director, depending on company. Sometimes you go from product director to VP product, and then you go to chief product officer and so on. And so this is not cast in stone, by the way. It varies by company, and I put that disclaimer there. So yeah, I want you all to read up about the key aspects of product management. You do discovery, you have to understand analytics, how to interpret data. That's very important, because data is useless if you cannot find a meaning in it. Product development, which is what are the things that it takes to actually build a product. For example, the way I explained that, you will need an API to connect from database, from backend to this and that overview, is enough to actually get you started of, understanding what it takes to actually build a product. Product roadmap, I've talked about that. Project management, which is like, how do you get, this project? Yes, we've decided we want to do it. How do we ensure that we actually get it done? Right? In the case where you don't have a agile delivery manager, how do you do it? Like I said, a PM can double as a project manager. Stakeholder manager, like I said, you have like senior stakeholders or senior colleagues, and that you defer to. You have other engineers, and so you need to ensure that everybody are on board with your vision for the product, for the feature, and so on. And that stakeholders management, making sure that everybody's on board. You are able to level up with everybody from time to time. Nobody is like aggrieved and so on, and that everybody's able to give you green lights to go and so on from time to time. And in case where there are issues, you're able to resolve it. And then of course, how do you ensure that the product you are building is making money? How do you ensure that it's the right pricing and is also making money? Or that again, these are the aspects that, for example, a growth product manager will look at. But in case when you don't have that as a PM where you work, especially in a smaller company, you have to be the one to track all these metrics. You need to be the one to set all these things to ensure that your product is successful in the market, right? So these are things you want to look at. And so I may send this to you if anyone actually needs it. And so these are the tools that you need. Like I said, I mentioned Jira, Trello, Mixpanel, Google Analytics, and so on. As Figma as well, even though you're a PM, you would have to look at the designs that has been done, how all of the user stories are being interpreted by the UX designer, for example, or the research that you've done has been turned into actual solutions that engineers can then pick up and write code for. So you want to see that, you want to comment on it, you want to ensure that you're giving like very, very useful feedback as well. And Google G Suite, for example, for documentation, like you can't do without this, or any other documentation tool out there, but G Suite is like the chairman of all of them, right? So you want to ensure that you pick all this up, you know how to do it. Looker, for example, is for looking at your analytics dashboard and making sure that you are seeing the data and you're making the right decisions from the data. Yeah, and so on and so on. Sometimes you want to make videos, and that's where the Adobe suite will come in as well. You want to make videos so that you can explain things. Explainer videos, for example, are important, especially if you are doing like I don't know, product all hands, or you have to show how what you have built as is working correctly in pre-prod. Maybe everybody else doesn't have access to it, but you have access to it and you want to show a demo of it. You should be able to create such video as a PM, so that you don't have to verbally just use mouth to describe things to people. But when it's in pre-prod or in staging environment, you're also able to like show this. That's an example of you needing to do a video as a PM and so on. So all of these tools as a PM, you should be able to use them. Miro, for example, for brainstorming, for whiteboarding and so on. You will need that. Of course, COVID has made that like a thing right now for all of us, and so you should have a grip, at least a mid-level sort of like proficiency in all of the software that I've written here, or at least you have an understanding of how it works and you're able to navigate your way around. So these are things that you need to do. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. It's been a pleasure sharing with you. If anyone has further questions, feel free to reach out to me on social media. I've dropped my handle there. See you next time. Thank you all and have a lovely, lovely, lovely weekend.